The PlayStation VR2 is finally here. But how good is it really compared to the Quest 2? And is it worth the upgrade? Now make sure you destroy that like button on your way in, and let's get right into it. The successor of the PlayStation VR has finally arrived.
Yeah, boy.
And its specs are completely off the chart. So when we want to compare it to the all-popular Quest 2, we have to start with the hardware differences. One of the most important things that you will directly notice is the high-resolution display. And although the resolution per eye is just slightly higher than that of the Quest 2, it does use an OLED screen, while Meta on the other hand uses an LCD panel.
Nice.
And thanks to the OLED screen, the PlayStation VR2 is also capable of pushing out HDR, creating much more vivid colors, a sharper image, but most importantly, very deep blacks, which honestly is a big upgrade. The same goes for the field of view that is now totaling at 110 degrees, compared to the 96 of the Quest, which gives you more immersion because the display will now almost cover your entire view. However, there are also some specs that are exactly the same. For example, the lens type are both using the old school Fresnel lenses, which is a small downgrade compared to that of the Pico 4 or the Quest Pro, which use pancake lenses instead, which creates a smaller and denser front visor. The same goes for the inside-out cameras, with both headsets having a total of 4 built into them, also creating the possibility for a black and white pass-through. But next to that, we also have some big changes, because the PlayStation VR2 also has eye tracking built into it, and thanks to it, can create something that we call foveated rendering. This is when a piece of hardware renders one specific spot on the screen in a higher quality compared to the rest around it. By doing so, creating a much clearer image, because this is the sweet spot that you're looking at. And although this might sound counterintuitive, this is exactly how your eyes work in real life as well, where when you focus on a single object, everything around it actually gets blurred out. And these next-gen features are not there in the Quest 2. The same goes for the crazy feature of haptic feedback being directly built into the headset. This is a very first on the market, with PlayStation taking their haptic feedback so seriously that they build it in their new VR controllers as well, creating a much more realistic feeling and immersion in virtual reality.
Hey, that's pretty good.
But although the PSVR 2 seems to be hitting it out of the park, there are also some hardware specs where the Quest 2 is a clear winner, one of which is hand tracking. This has been included all the way back since the original Quest, and although not many apps and games make use of it, it is a very intuitive way to interact with the world around you, and this is not available on PlayStation VR 2. A second big feature is that the Quest 2 has built-in speakers and the option to make use of a headphone jack, whereas the PlayStation VR 2 does not have built-in speakers at all. But to compensate for it, it does come bundled with a pair of plug-in headphones. But that gets us probably to one of the most controversial topics regarding these two headsets, because the Quest 2 is complete standalone. This means you don't need a console or PC to be able to run it. You just put on your headset and you're ready to go. But if you want to, there is the possibility to even connect it wirelessly to your PC, so you can play all the PC VR content that you can imagine. Whereas the PlayStation VR 2 does not have this option, where you always have to be wired to a PlayStation 5 console and do not have access to PC VR titles or wireless gameplay. And with that comes the biggest problem, because besides the wire problem, this also means that there will be a big difference in price, with the Quest 2 coming in at $399. The PSVR starts at $549. And keep in mind that you also need a PlayStation 5, starting at the same price of $550 to be able to use the headset. However, besides the great hardware, it is actually the software and games that sell a headset, because even with the best specs possible, but with no games at all, there won't be a single person to buy it in the first place. And that is exactly why Sony doubled down on their AAA game, starting off with their exclusive launch title, that was Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is receiving amazing reviews everywhere, and it takes the player on a fun adventure throughout breathtaking worlds, based on the amazing franchise that so many are familiar with. And creating it in VR gives it so much more immersion. And although Sony is working on many other AAA games, they did make a lot of users worried when they announced that the PlayStation VR 2 is not backwards compatible. And at first, this would mean that all the original PlayStation VR games could not be played on their next generation headset. But luckily, this news didn't turn out as bad, because most of their main hits will get an upgrade to PlayStation VR 2. These are games like The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, where you get tossed into the ruins of New Orleans, faced with hordes of zombies and where you have to fight to survive, but also smaller games like Puzzling Places and Songs in the Smoke. And one of the fan favorites is the all-new upgrade to Resident Evil Village VR, which is gonna be a game changer for many, since it didn't only prove to be one of the best looking games on PlayStation 5 today, it is gonna be even more realistic when you play it in virtual reality. But so many other games, like Pistol Whip and Job Simulator, are also getting their upgrade to PlayStation VR2, but I'll leave a link to the full list in the description below. But Sony didn't stop there. They even revealed some details that you might have not heard about before. One of which is that you can use your PlayStation VR2 without needing use of a TV at all. Now, the first original setup does require you to use your TV screen to make some quick selections. But once this setup is complete, you technically don't need a TV anymore at all to be able to use the headset. And the flexibility to leave the TV off or completely disconnect it could lead to a more flexible use cases that some have come to expect with their next generation. And although it is still a fully wired experience that requires a USB-C port on the front of the PlayStation 5, it is now possible to privately watch a movie with your earbuds in or jumping into VR quickly without the use of your TV at all, making it much simpler than the PSVR setup where people constantly need to use the traditional display to boot up their system. And secondly, Sony also revealed some secrets when they showed off some videos where they completely took apart their headset. And this I recommend for all those VR enthusiasts out there, because during the video, the actual maker of the headset explains exactly how they built it and what reasons they had behind certain design choices. And while it might be a bit too technical for some, it sure is interesting to see how much thought went into building this headset, but also how they used user feedback to make changes in both the weight as well as the lens adjustments. And they even made a second video going more into detail about their PlayStation VR2 controllers. But do keep in mind that you do not do this at home, since taking apart your controllers or headset will completely cancel your warranty. But that gets us to the final conclusion, with the main question being, should you buy a PlayStation VR2? Now, if you already own a PlayStation 5 and you do not own a Meta Quest 2 headset, then I think the answer is a big yes, because this new headset has some amazing specs that almost no VR headset can compare to. And with their amazing AAA games coming in the future, I think that this will be an absolute game changer for PlayStation. However, if you already own a Quest 2 or do not own a PlayStation 5 in the first place, then you might want to think twice about your purchase, because buying a PlayStation 5 and PSVR 2 will get you at a price point of at least $1,100. Which is definitely nothing to laugh at. And for those already owning a Quest 2, it might not be worth the upgrade if it is not for the AAA exclusive games. But in the end, I think Sony surprised many of us, coming out with a headset that was much better than expected. And I honestly can't wait to see how far they can push it with their exclusive VR games.